So what we're going to learn for this, what you call this, for this session is actually to, to learn about the concept of knowledge. And then you also need to understand, how knowledge is actually differentiated from data and information. So now let's move to the second learning objective that we're going to learn. This is about the definition itself and what are actually the pillars or what we call these elements that, we put in the context of defining knowledge management, okay? And then the third learning objective is just to allow you to appreciate, the historical context and also to see knowledge management trends, research, and also as a discipline, okay? So you are actually, going to go through with another 2 hours after I completed the synchronous teaching today video. Okay, there are actually a few series of that, and it's actually very, very good. Okay, as part of your improving your understanding. Okay. So when we talk from the viewpoint of the technologies, okay, the evolution of technology, like the first video I show you is actually in 1984, the net, you see the diskette there. And then when we are looking at the era of what you call this artificial intelligence, so the Web 4.0, which actually captured in 2018 here, is actually having a lot of the features of elements, okay? So coming from the background of technology, we always keep up to date about the technological trends, and we are looking from the impact from the viewpoint of business, how the technology actually impacting business. The same like, you are the students, okay? Myself also a student once upon a time. And then, when I actually started my education, between 1989 to 1999, within Web 1.0, Web 2.0, I can recall back during my Purdue time last time, where we have the Apple versus the, Microsoft, application. And then that's actually about 1996, 1997. And then 1997, 1998, then I used extensively on the internet. 1998, 1996, 1994, 1995, that time we have a computer club, at schools. And I remember my first experience, around that time, like computer, you're so scared, so many things, if you press one button, like it can go kaboom, for example. So those are the experience, with the technology at that time, okay? And then when come to the Web 4.0 now, we are, and also advancing to the Industrial Revolution, there's a lot of disruptive technologies, okay? And then you see just now through the video about the artificial intelligence, big data, and then you see about what you call this, the use of algorithms, So all the advancing nature of the, what you call this, the technology, permitted, the kind of innovative ways that we are actually can manage knowledge, use knowledge, leverage knowledge, and to the extent to create, the robots, the use of artificial intelligence, for example. These are actually the example where knowledge actually, can be manipulated, can be advanced, and also, you can actually put programs and can do a lot of wonder things, okay? So in this context, just to introduce to you, okay, about the, how the technology has shaped a lot of things, okay, and this is also related to the existence of knowledge management, the emergence of knowledge management as a subject discipline. So, I just learned also that, I thought that we are up to exabyte or zettabyte. So now there is actually another yottabyte, okay, in terms of how we actually measure in terms of the volume of data, okay. So we are introduced with byte, megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte. So, United States already actually putting, the kind of research that actually can reach to the yottabyte, okay? So how big is the yottabyte, for example? So we'll fill the state of Delaware and Rhode Island with 1 million of data center. So if you're talking from terabyte, so right now we can purchase a terabyte in the very, very cheap, it's not that expensive, okay? For example, I can go by external my hard disk about 3 terabyte. It cost me about 200 plus, okay, ringgit, Malaysia. And then petabyte is actually when you have, 2 data center cabinet. It's a big one, okay. Exabyte, 2,000 cabinet. This is just to show you the scale of the volume of data. and then zettabyte, and finally it's actually yottabyte, actually, moving into the what you call the context of application. Okay, so this is actually to show that with a lot of this the evolution of technologies, and with a lot of disruptive technology coming in. So we are not just now about managing data, managing information, managing knowledge. We are actually advancing beyond than that. Okay, so this is actually this is actually where knowledge management coming in. Okay, and then from knowledge, you can do a lot of wonderful things. Okay, that's why in the context of this subject, innovation become part of the important ways of shaping our thinking, the way that we perceive or understand about knowledge. This is just to share with you about some trends that going on, because when you talk about knowledge management, you have to to really understand about the association of this subject nature with the economy, the knowledge economy or digital economy. Okay, knowledge based economy. So we're going to cover this in a very specific topic. Okay, so this is just to introduce to you about the about the digital what you call this, some data about the digital economy or knowledge economy now. So we are actually around January 2020, about 7.75 billion, approaching about 8 billion now. And then if you're talking about the mobile phone user alone, we have actually about 5 billion. Okay, so the penetration rate is about 67%. What does it mean? It means that almost everyone actually owning what you call this a phone, and now it's actually a smartphone. And then in this smartphone, if you're looking from the viewpoint of a user of the technology, where you have to manage data, you have to manage information, you have to manage knowledge. So the user of technology now is actually being put in the scenario that with your smartphone, you can actually have so many things inside there. Okay, for example, in my smartphone, it's not just about the typical alarm clock, schedule, checking email, connecting to internet. I also have about hundreds of books that actually I downloaded and put inside my smartphone, through the Kindle. I subscribe to that. Okay, I have the application for that. And you also actually can have what you call this, a lot of apps that actually can contributing towards the what you call the learning process, which means that it's related to upgrading knowledge and so on. Okay, so that's actually the wonderful part of the technology. And then talking about the internet user, the penetration rate is about 59%. So we still have about half of the penetration rate. Half actually haven't actually got access to the internet, and this penetration rate of the internet also closely associated with the the poverty level. Okay, for example, the access rate to the third world country or poor country probably is actually lower, okay, than compared to the advanced of the developing countries. Okay, and then one of the thing also that we see in terms of the social media application, which is actually now reaching close to 4 billion with the 49% penetration. What does it mean? It means that in this world right now, we are so interconnected, and technology permitted this connection, through the social media application. So, you are actually in the era, regardless of what you are coming from this generation, okay? You have to learn, wisely, about how you can actually leverage the social media application, okay? I mean, this is actually my stand. Other people will argue that I want to disconnect from social media and so on, but I view it very differently. Okay, it is actually depends on how you using it. Okay, you leverage it. Okay, and then you have to understand the technology. Okay, so that you are more wiser. Okay, wiser meaning that wisdom. Okay, apply that in order to use the technology to create benefit for you, benefit for the community, benefit for the country, for example. Okay, so social media have also those kind of what you call this strength that actually you can leverage, as a user. But most importantly, we have to apply in the context of how do we actually put it in the action, and also using our wisdom to use it. Okay. And then this is actually the example how the social media users, okay, if you talk from by gender. If you look, for example, in the context of the Southeast Asia, for example, you will see that, the red one, male actually using more, about 55% social media. So there are actually perceptions saying that people actually hook, female hook more, but actually the reality shows that, you know, you see the 52% of the male, you know, from Southeastern Asia actually using more social media compared to the female. Okay. And then you see, for example, in the Western Africa, you see about 64%, meaning that from the context of how we translated the data, the technology or the penetration rate of you know, the application, also maybe the technology itself, like smartphone, it's because the female actually haven't have a widely access for that. It's the same like education, you know, for example, in Western Africa, Northern Africa, Western Asia, you know, even Central Asia. So, and then you see quite a stark difference, you know, almost half of that, okay, between male and female in terms of the disparity, or what we call it, the divide, you know, between the two gender. And then if you look from the Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, for example, and you look from the Northern America, United States, and in those areas, and you look from Central America, Caribbean, you look from Southern America, Southern Africa, okay, so it's almost 50-50, okay. So this is actually just to show you about the you know, the penetration rate according to gender when we talk from the social media application. So the most used social platform is actually Facebook, okay, YouTube, WhatsApp, okay. So these three, meaning that, you know, as a person that actually, you know, have to work around the technology, and technology, you know, believe me, if you have the knowledge about it, actually can be, you know, can create a lot of wonders, and also can help the way that we manage our life, okay. But you really have to apply the wise side, the wisdom part, you know, to become a very responsible technology users, and also how to, you know, to make use of the technology. So these are actually the kind of, you know, trend that we see now, okay. And then if you talk from the global internet use, okay, you know, like I mentioned to you just now, this is actually captured earliest April 2020, is about almost to 5 billion. Okay, and then it's about 59% out of the global population that we captured in 2020, okay, April. And then the average internet user is about 7.1%. So from the business point of view, from the organization point of view, when you see such a trend, you know, I mean, as a business to survive, meaning that they have to tap into the environment, the knowledge economy, to take advantage of the digital economy, okay, and you know, to have their business, you know, to apply digitalization, okay, to be involved in the digital transaction, okay. So you can actually avoid doing that. So, and if we also look at the time per day span, April 2020 is also the time that you know, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic coming. And you know, there's a lot of other places, Malaysia as well, actually going through the what you call this, the PKP, or the movement restricted order. Okay, I think Indonesia at that time is really haven't actually you know, put the restricted movement order yet, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, but for Malaysia, we start in 15 April or something, 16 April if I'm not mistaken, 16 March if I'm not mistaken. And it's escalated to I think more than you know, until now it's actually a bit relaxed, but we have to comply all the SOP. So what you see also, the internet user, you know, people spend more time, okay, at home, and more time actually using the internet. So it's now actually reaching to 6 hours 39 minutes. So this is actually captured in April 2020. So with this knowledge, what does it mean to the organization? So it also means that, you know, like I always, you know, this is actually the thinking, you know, the important thinking, that with all the trends that are going on, so the organization need to survive, the organization also need to change, okay, need to adapt with the current trends. Right now also, for example, I think students, you know, they sometimes they just lazy to cook last time. You know, last time you don't see the food panda around Kuching, you know. I think in Indonesia also the same, you know, but right now food panda and all those delivery, you know, it's actually becoming something that's so important, you know, to certain segment of society. Okay, so this is actually also to comply with the current trends that's actually what's going on around us. Okay. So this is actually the way that we look from the context of the what you call this internet use. So people spending more time with device. So you will see from smartphone is about 76%. Okay, so that's actually the largest that you will see. You know, that spending time using the smartphone. So what are the popular web browser? Of course, the Google Chrome is actually, taking a very large market share. It's about 65%, okay? And then the unconnected audience, meaning that there are a wide market for that, for the technology to penetrate. So you will see that, the most, you see the Southern Asia, Western Africa. So you see, this is actually quite large, or Eastern Africa. Okay, so quite large in terms of the unconnected audience. So what actually you are looking from the mobile apps, okay, the app category, if you look from the download one is 2009 from Google Play, so games, tools, entertainment. So it's almost, consistently, okay. So this is actually also what we keep track as part of the, what is the trend. So the mobile shopping apps, since everyone spent a lot of time, okay. So last year, 2019, we see in Indonesia, for example, Tokopedia, Shopee, Bukalapak. So this is actually something I never tried or I have understanding about this one. Malaysia, Lazada, Shopee, Taobao. Okay, so these are the Singapore. So Singapore also have their own, these apps. Okay, Qoo10 Singapore, and then Thailand. And then AliExpress start to make a marking in Thailand as top 3. And then Vietnam, they also have Tiki.Vietnam. Okay, this is actually the mobile shopping apps. Okay, so meaning that from the digital economy or knowledge economy point of view, because of the trend, actually, we are talking about these widely connected networks. Okay, so a business also, in order to survive, they also have to be involved in the digital economy. So we see this increasing trend, and including the what you call the Southeast Asia as well. And then mobile shopping apps becoming one of the important platform right now. Okay. And then, so now coming back to the, the first learning objective. So how do we differentiate between, data, information, and knowledge? So at the bottom here, like I mentioned, I clarified to you a bit. So data actually about informational bits. For example, if the data about myself is gender, for example, female. So data raw is red, for example, that's data. So meaningful data, so information is actually a meaningful data. So it create the meaning for you, okay, to interpret this data. So for example, information, south-facing traffic light on corner of Pitjor Street has turned red. So this is actually how you put all the data, and you make it, something that create meaning for you. Okay, this is talking about the traffic light, when the traffic light actually turn red. And then knowledge is what the traffic light I'm driving towards has turned red. So this knowledge is actually about contextualized information. Context meaning that you are as a person actually being there through time, within the time and space context. So you contextualize this information. You're driving a car and suddenly, you see the traffic light, and then the traffic light actually has turned red. Okay. So the wisdom, based on your experience and so on, when you apply the knowledge, okay, become our wisdom, you will say that better stop the car, otherwise the accident will happen. Okay, so this is actually how we actually look from I take this from knowledge pyramid from Mesga. So from the intelligent, consciousness, and value. So knowledge, wisdom, actually very closely related to value. Okay, so this is actually the kind of things that you can actually internalize or pursue further. So knowledge management is always interdisciplinary by nature. Okay, if you look from the context of technology also, okay, the discipline actually connected to all what you call this various levels of this various disciplines. Okay, so again, if you're talking from data, so we are talking about observable or verifiable. So this is actually the content if you want to apply from the technology viewpoint. And the information, you content that represent analyzed data. For example, I cannot leave before 5, or so I will go to the 7 p.m. show at the cinema near my office. Okay. While knowledge is actually when you contextualize what you call this all aspect that related to that. So you will say that at the time of the day, it will be impossible to find parking. I remember the last time I took the car, I was so frustrated and stressed. So knowledge is actually, the kind that you're drawing from your experience. Okay, the context, the contextualize of information, is creating meaning to you. You also putting your perception, your judgment into that. Okay, so that's actually the what you call this the understanding about knowledge. Okay. So when we actually try to differentiate between data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, you can look from the three perspective. The definition itself: data is raw facts, information meaningful, useful data, and knowledge is actually about the understanding, contextualize of that information, and then wisdom when you apply the knowledge and you have certain set to achieve goals. So the simplest way that we can look at that. And then the learning process that involved, because data, information, knowledge, wisdom, we are actually looking from the viewpoint of individual, ours, a human being. Okay, so learning process, you accumulate truth, information, you giving form and functionality. This is where the meaningful aspect coming in. And then knowledge is actually when you're moving upper levels, okay, the higher order thinking skill. If you look if you look from the education point of view, when there's a lot of analysis, there are a lot of synthesis. And then wisdom is actually when you discern judgment and also you're taking appropriate action. Okay, so people say that when experience can teach you to be a more wise person, for example, because through experience you actually have a better judgment on situation and so on. So from the point of view of the knowledge management, how do we see this? When you talk from the outcome, managing data, you are talking about data bank, for example. From the point of view of learning, we are talking about memorization, about data, and then comprehension, understanding. When you're talking about information, managing information, and then when we talk about knowledge go by beyond than that. It's not just a level of comprehension, understanding the whole context. So the knowledge bank coming in, and then the wisdom is about the better living or success, or the wisdom bank. Okay, so this is just some interest simplest way to see. So what with the trend right now, so what we see also from the analytics point of view, okay, with the technology becoming so disruptive, with the volume of data, the technology can permit that, the storage, the manage, you can actually, what you call this, process, manipulate data, okay? So, the kind of future now is actually moving very, very fast, okay, about the wisdom part, okay? Reveals direction, what is best, reveal principle, because you can learn a lot of trends, you can actually, that's how the artificial intelligence coming in, okay? The intelligence part of the to make use of the data and information, okay? Then it can go beyond that knowledge. When it start to reveal certain principle, it start to become a kind of application to be used to to provide advice and so on. Okay, this is actually where we see the use of expert system. For example, if you go to bank, for example, to apply loan, they can run a system, to profile you, and at the end of the day, they can actually recommend. The system can recommend whether that you pass through certain criteria, you are actually have a high potential that you will actually pay your loan, and then you should actually be given opportunity for that. So this is actually what actually the technology coming in, where they can actually impact on decision very, very extensively. And also when coming to the wisdom aspect, technology through artificial intelligence also can actually create or advancing the human understanding, for example. Okay, so this is actually the examples where we are now, okay, at the level of the stage now. This is actually the scenario right now about the Alibaba, okay, Alibaba Killers and Cashless Hotel. I want you to watch this video later on, okay, because I try to keep everything around 9:15, so I have about 15 more minutes. So whatever I don't finish, we will continue later, okay. So watch this video to see the how actually the Alibaba through the cashless Killers Hotel, okay, they're actually becoming part of their ways of doing things now, okay, with their hotel. So when we talk, from the point of view of the another side, okay, T.S. Eliot is one of the poet, the famous one. He said that, where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? So while the technology also coming in and provide a lot of opportunity, there are also a lot of aspect where the human nature, each of us are different, okay. For example, parenting now becoming very, very challenging. Okay, it's like you have the what you call it, the article, the recent one that have a complete guide to potentially dangerous apps all parents should be aware of, including the TikTok, for example. Okay, So it really depends on the, on the viewpoint of individual and user to be a responsible user. Okay, so you at this stage of your age, and then coming to the third year, and sooner or later, you're going out to work. You should be able to what you call it, to differentiate what sort of bad or irresponsible use of apps and so on. Okay, you this is actually the wisdom. Apart from the knowing how to use the apps, you have to apply your wisdom, apply the knowledge to guide, for the good, for the betterment of the life. Okay. So if you talk from the knowledge concept, so knowledge is actually information possessed in the mind of individuals. Okay, so we are talking about human being in this point of view. Okay, a personalized information, like I mentioned to you, fact, procedure, concept, interpretation, ideas, observation, and judgment. And then it's also a result from the cognitive processing, the way that there's a lot of stimulus. That's why research say that, if you are actually want to learn, become a fast learner, or you want to learn things very, very, very fast, very quick, okay, you have to look at your environment at the same time. Okay. Sometimes you have to get out from your normal environment, so that when there's a lot of stimulus coming in, your mind start to be very active to process information and convert to knowledge. So knowledge becomes information once it is articulated and presented in the form of text, graphic, words, or other symbolic forms. Okay, this is the example where we see from the viewpoint of technology how we can convert this knowledge. So and when we talk from the understanding point of view, to arrive on the same understanding, you and me have to share certain knowledge base. So knowledge base is really a very, very important, because we infer things. So for example, in the design of the expert system, decision support system, so we have the inference engine, because the knowledge base become part of very, very critical. It's like the brain of the system. Okay. And then the technology roles in this case, it can enable user to assign meaning to information and to capture some of their knowledge, in information or data. So when we talk from the knowledge concept also, we are actually what you call this apply such a model, okay, socialization, externalization, internalization, combination as the foundation for this course. Okay, so this is actually the application of such a model from Nonaka. So one of we're going to pursue further about this one. Don't worry about it yet. Okay, one of the things that you need to recognize also at this stage, there are two form of knowledge. One is actually explicit knowledge, another one tacit knowledge. So there are two different what you call this major recognition about explicit versus tacit knowledge. So what is actually the explicit knowledge? Explicit or codified knowledge, this is actually where we transmit formal or systematic language. We recorded the language, the knowledge. For example, the database. For example, the PowerPoint that I show you right now, okay, this is actually what we call as the explicit knowledge. Okay, you can codify it. Tacit knowledge is very hard to formalize and communicate, rooted in action, experience, and involvement in a specific context. So, Porai giving you lecture right now, and of course, when I record this lecture that I have, it becomes the codified knowledge. It becomes explicit knowledge. But if I don't actually, recorded that using the technology to record that, so, the way that I explain to you, or I converse, telling you, explain to you, all actually become the tacit knowledge. Okay, so this is actually rooted in action, experience, and involvement in this particular context, space, and time. The right now that I have this conversation, I'm running this lecture with you. Okay, so this is actually the difference between explicit versus tacit knowledge. Now, if you go slightly deeper, okay, about the properties or the features of tacit knowledge. So tacit knowledge is actually have certain, this is actually how we function, dealing with new exceptional situation. We also, what you call this, involved in the collaboration, sharing vision, transmit culture, expertise, know-how, know why, and care why. Coaching, mentoring, for example, to transfer experiential knowledge. So experiential knowledge, leverage a lot on tacit knowledge. Properties of explicit knowledge, disseminate, reproduce, reapply, ability to teach, to train, because we coded the knowledge. And then because we put everything in we coded the knowledge, it's accessible through internet technology, in the database, through the evidence base. So we have an ability to organize, systematize, translate a vision into mission statement, into operational guideline, put it in the manual handbook, write books and so on, And then we can also transfer the knowledge via product, services, and documented process. So this is actually the importance of both tacit and explicit knowledge, and the way that we can actually leverage this for innovation. Okay. So what are the characteristics of the knowledge? Knowledge is subjective, like I mentioned to you, created by people within their interactions, the context, okay, and require value judgment to be knowledge, okay. And then it's also process relational. So this is taken from the Nonaka with the foundation from the Searching model. It's emerged in from the experience, subjective process of feeling, and then also how we interpret the world. So knowledge is born through the multiple perspective of human interaction. And then to understand knowledge, it's important to understand, the process in which humans are interrelated, because it's a process relational, okay? And then knowledge also have to be judged in terms of its significance. For example, the good thing about to relate the example about knowledge is aesthetic. For example, people who actually understand more about cancer, sometimes people who suffer cancer themselves, and people who have family is actually, suffering cancer. So they will learn a lot about cancer, and then the knowledge about cancer actually becoming very important for them, because they are actually having the create in terms of the understanding, in the interaction with the person who suffer cancer, for example. And then they also actually relate to another person, that actually where they integrate the knowledge and then emerge from their experience. So this is actually the example where where the to explain about the characteristic of knowledge, that knowledge is aesthetic. So knowledge also created through practices. So knowledge can only be created through the actual practice of dealing with each particular situation. So maybe when you don't put knowledge in action, meaning that you apply knowledge in order to to answer the exam, to finish your what you call this, your homework, to do the assignment and so on. Okay, so you put it in action. But like I said, to make it powerful, knowledge, you have to put in action in such a way that it creates, the kind of impact. Okay, so this is actually where knowledge put in action, it can be very, very powerful. Okay, so you have these four, broad characteristic of knowledge according to Nonaka, Toyama, and Hirata. Okay, in 2008. So the wisdom also one of the interesting concept. Okay, so this is actually coming from this book, How Collective Wisdom Shape Business, Economy, Society, and Nation by Sarawaki. Okay, he argued that he defined that the aggregation of information in group resulting in decision that are often better that can have been made by any single member of the group. Okay, the book Wisdom of Crowd is actually very, very interesting. A lot of argument put inside there. So he argued that, you need to have 4 criteria in order to allow for the wisdom of crowds actually to emerge. One is about the diversity of opinion. You must allow people just to be eccentric as they are, and then they must actually be able to voice out their opinion regardless of, so the diversity is very crucial. And then independent people opinion also not determined by opinion of those around them, meaning that they use their thinking, okay, to form their opinion. And then decentralization, so they're also able to specialize and draw on local knowledge. And then aggregation, so some mechanism exists for turning private judgment into a collective decision. So you have certain platform that can allow this. Okay, so this is actually the kind of aspect where you can create the what we call, he argued that the wisdom of the crowd. So when we're talking from the wisdom point of view, okay, just to give you an example. So usually we see a glass, so you always see the optimist versus a pessimist, So is the glass half full or half empty? If you look from the, what you call this, from a lot of other discipline, the psychology will look into how does this glass of water make you feel, okay? The nutrition, the nutritionist probably asking, there isn't enough water here for a person daily needs. They argue that, people need to drink about 7 or 8 glasses every day, okay, in order to, to say that you drinking enough water. And then from engineering, they say that this glass has 50% overall inefficiency. That's actually from the domain of engineering. Business marketing, okay, will the glass sell better marketed as half empty or half full? Okay, so that's actually from the point of view of the marketer, for example. And then English will say that what is the symbolism of the glass not being completely full? Woman study, would you give a man a full glass, for example? Philosophy, how do I know the glass is there? Law, what do you want it to be? Accounting, this glass is 50% in the red, okay? Art, the water doesn't complement the air above it, okay? So there's a lot of interpretation, you know, according to the, what you call the perspective, according to we make use of the knowledge, okay? So the wisdom is about, you know, go beyond than that, where you also actually, you know, accept the different, you know, the power of diversity actually can create better group, firm, school, and society, and also contribute to better decision making and better judgment. So this is actually about the crowd of wisdom. What does it mean in that context? You know, the wisdom also, you know, we say that it doesn't matter if the glass is half empty or half full. Be grateful that you have a glass and there is something in it. So there are a lot of, you know, countries that actually doesn't have access to water, clean water, you know. You will see that water become, you know, water is very scarce from the economic point of view. Everybody accept that, the scarcity of that. And then you can also look from the perspective half empty, half full. It's about perspective that can change the way, you know, we look at life. It can be a turning point. It can be a triggering point. So wisdom actually, when we actually about discerning judgment, is actually related to this context. Okay, when we actually apply knowledge and then we taking certain perspective and then we you know, of course, for the betterment of life, that's actually what you say. You are a wise person to make judgment. You know, something like that. So this is also part of something that I want you to watch. Okay, I try to revisit again. Let me finish first about the dimension of knowledge. Okay, so if in the context of we see from the viewpoint of the what you call this the business. So we have to recognize that knowledge is a firm asset. Knowledge is intangible. You know, creation of knowledge from data, information. We need to invest resources for that. And then knowledge, in order to what you call to make it very powerful, it have to be shared, you know, and then you need to have the network effect, okay, shareable, collaboration, all this you know, element have to be there. And knowledge has different forms. So we recognize just now explicit versus tacit knowledge, but there are also taxonomy of knowledge, know-how, you know, procedural knowledge, you know, causality knowledge. So there are many you know, form of knowledge, you know. And then knowledge has a location. It is a contextualized, what you call information. So it related to cognitive events, cognitive meaning that our thinking process, okay? And then it also can involve social individuals, because knowledge is relational, like we relate back to what Nonaka, you know, put in the context of the characteristic of knowledge. Knowledge also can have a different kind of, you know, classification, like sticky, situated, contextual. You know, and we accept that knowledge is situational, conditional, knowing when to apply procedure, contextual, knowing circumstances to use certain tool. For example, a surgeon to operate, you know, a brain surgeon to do operation. So they have to apply, you know, conditional knowledge to know what kind of, you know, procedure to run, for example. Okay, so this is actually the aspect that we must recognize about the dimension of knowledge. Okay, and then when we look from the taxonomy, so there are various knowledge types. Okay, this is actually taken from Alavi and Ledner. So you will see tacit, a cognitive tacit, technical tacit. You can actually, you know, go deeper than that. Okay, knowledge is rooted in action, experience, and involvement in specific context. Explicit, like we mentioned, generalized knowledge. You know, you accorded the knowledge. Individual knowledge, social knowledge, declarative knowledge, know about, procedural, know how, causal, know why, conditional, know when, relational, know with, pragmatic knowledge, for example, the practical knowledge. For example, best practices, business framework, project experience, those are actually in the practical knowledge. So you can see the different taxonomy of knowledge, okay? So from the context of the business, you know, and of course, knowledge management is also, you know, one day probably, you know, most of you will manage something, manage project, become manager yourself, okay? So we always actually recognize that, you know, there are actually a lot of factors that are affecting the business environment, okay? And then the rate of change in factors in environment can be low or high. Like technology is actually always high, the way that the technology disrupt the business process, okay? And then, you know, technology alone is one of the factor, you know, like the COVID pandemic, the COVID-19 is another factor that affecting business now. So when you have a lot of this, you know, the gaps, okay, about the certainty, okay, low uncertainty, high uncertainty. So when it's actually reaching to this, you know, high rate of change, you know, and then you have a lot of high number of factors affecting the environment, you need to be adaptable, okay? So management must adapt to changes. And then businesses have to change, okay, in order to win to the marketplace, of course. Before the businesses can actually expand it, acquire more market share, start with the workplace first, you know, start with the staff, start with the employee, you know, start with the manager, start with the leader, okay. So this is actually the context where the knowledge management coming in, then the way that I construct the content for this course, okay. So to transform information into knowledge, you know, the firm must invest resources so that you can make use of the knowledge to discover pattern, rules, context, okay. And then you also recognize that wisdom, you know, collective individual experience applying knowledge to solve problems, okay, involve where, when, and how to apply knowledge. So investing on knowledge has become very, very critical and one of the source for the survivability of the organization, okay. And then knowing how to do things effectively and efficiently in ways others cannot duplicate. This is actually what we call, you know, earning competitive advantage. Okay, so these are the examples, you know, how you actually looking from the viewpoint of the business. So there are actually a lot of definition of knowledge that I extracted. So I already put the what you call this the reference here. I want you to check the reference that actually coming from, you know, chapter 2. You can actually look into it, you know, ellipse side, and I want you to read, you know. So this is actually the kind of what you call material that actually you know, very useful to grab the understanding about the fundamental or the basic of knowledge management. Okay, so you will see that, you know, about 32 definition related to knowledge management that capture from various point of view, you know. Including law itself. For example, in Article 13, you know, CO, for example, knowledge is a fluid mix of contextual information, values, and experience. For an organization, this reside within employees, they call human capital, and represent a source of creativity, innovation, and adaptability to change. Knowledge management is an explicit use to use this capital. So you have a lot of interpretation about that. Okay, so I want you to spend time to study about this one. Okay. So for as no universal knowledge management definition, so we can look from the process organization generate value from their intellectual and knowledge-based asset. We also look from the process, you know, from the technology viewpoint, the process of capture, distribute, effectively use knowledge. And then we can also look as a discipline, you know, where it's actually integrate the process, identify, capture, evaluate, retrieve, and sharing all the firm information assets. So this asset may include database, document, policy, procedure, uncaptured expertise, the tacit knowledge, you know, and then experience of the worker. So we look from that point of view. And then we also look that it's a business process, okay, that formalize the management and use the firm intellectual assets. So it promote collaborative, integrative approach, okay, to the creation, capture, organization, access, and use of information asset, as well as the tacit knowledge, okay. And then, so there are many kind of activities that actually, you know, you can actually associate with the knowledge management. So there are a lot of interpretation, you know, within the knowledge management. So it's a framework. You can look from the viewpoint. So the vision of how, you know, you can create, you know, in order to transform from the, you know, to build a learning organization, for example, okay, create the enablers. So this is actually where you can actually tap on the values from the knowledge management. So knowledge management of value chain, we can see from the context of each stage adding value. So we are talking from acquisition, storage, dissemination, and application. So that is from the context of value chain. And then in the organization also, some you know, organization that going into a very, very specific roles. So they have you know, chief knowledge officer, they have knowledge manager, and also they practice the COP, community of practice. So this is the informal social network of professional and employees. So activity can include education, sharing experience, and other you know, techniques. And then they can facilitate reuse of knowledge, discussion, and reduce learning curve of new employees. So you know, community of practice has become very, very important, you know, in order to allow a lot of informal learning to happen, okay, and make the workers more competent in doing their job, for example, okay. So we also recognize the three major types of knowledge: enterprise-wide knowledge, knowledge work system, and intelligent techniques, okay. So I will actually go detail with you when we are actually coming into the topic that's specific about the technologies, okay. And then, you know, from the week knowledge management cycle also, when we frame in the context of people. So you build knowledge, hold knowledge, pool knowledge, and use knowledge. So knowledge actually, when you build knowledge, it's coming from learning from personal experience. You formal education, like you are taking this course, so you are actually a university student, you're reading books, okay? When you hold knowledge, you are actually in your mind, in tangible form. You can write, you can put in books. Pull knowledge, you can put in the system, and then use knowledge. This is actually when you put in the practice that combine with all other aspects, okay? And then in this case also, when we talk from internalization, how one actually make use of the knowledge, you also can go into the 5 level: novice, beginner, competent, expert, and master. So when you're reaching, for example, the competent, you know about the knowledge, you can use and reason with the knowledge, given external knowledge base such as document and people to help. But when you reach to mastery, you internalize the knowledge fully, you have a deep understanding with full integration of values, judgment, and consequences. So the mastery meaning that you're reaching to the level of the wisdom, okay? So this is actually the aspect where you look from the internalization that happening in the individual, and you can classify according to 5 levels, okay? I think we can go later on about this part, okay? So what are the implications? So you will see, you can look from the 5 perspective here, okay? For example, from the process, knowledge is a process of applying, expertise. And implication for knowledge management, it will focus on knowledge flow, process of creating, sharing, and distributing knowledge. And if you look from the value chain, how do we add value? Meaning that the knowledge management system or framework have to add value in every single process that going through creating knowledge, sharing knowledge, and distributing knowledge, applying knowledge, okay? So what are the role of IT? Is providing link among sources to knowledge to create a wider breadth and depth of knowledge flow. Capability is about the knowledge, have potential to influence action. So knowledge management about building core competencies so that you can understand the strategic know-how for the organization. And what are the role of the IT? Is actually to enhance intellectual capital, okay, to support development of individual and organizational competency, and actually to build up the innovation culture, okay? So these are the aspects where you can actually divide into the 6, perspective when you talk from the knowledge and their implication, okay? So I can actually revisit that again later on with you, okay? So what are the timelines? So I want you to Google and search to appreciate about knowledge management as a subject, as a knowledge discipline, okay? So, when you start with the internet coming in, and then there's also one article that very famous in the Sloan Management about organizational learning. And then in Asia, Nonaka actually coming with such a model is also one of the very powerful and influential model about related to knowledge management. And of course, 2000 onwards, we have a lot of advancing, when we are moving further to Web 4.0, artificial intelligence, and so on. Okay, so these are the aspects where you can look from the timeline of knowledge management. So what are actually some trends that we see from the knowledge management as a subject, as a discipline? So businesses now want a clear business value and ROI for the knowledge management effort. So when they invest a lot on capturing, investing a lot on capture knowledge, information, and then knowledge, information asset. So they want to see the ROI. And then clear understanding about knowledge management, enterprise, artificial intelligence. Okay, so these are the aspects also they want to understand. And then acceptance and recognition of the enabling role of technology in knowledge management, okay, and then improve understanding about the knowledge ecosystem, okay, with all type of knowledge, information, and data. So with a lot of disruptive technology going on, the ecosystem now actually have to be defined very, very clearly in that context, okay. And then recognize knowledge management organization and mandate as a critical success factor. So learning organization built up from organizational learning tools, and then a lot of these a good innovation culture, then you can establish a learning organization. One of the example that the research identify learning organization is a Google company. Okay, that's example. All right. Okay.